What is good, everybody? Today I wanted to answer another Q&A for a very common drone question that I've seen on the internet for a number of years now, especially once DJI launched their mini series to go underneath that 250 gram mark. And that question in one version or another is it all comes down to, do drones under 250 grams have the same flight restrictions as other ones? And the simple, very simple answer to that, at least in the United States, is yes. It has the exact same flight restrictions. You can't fly into restricted airspace. You can't go above 400 feet above ground level. You can't really do anything it doesn't get you any other benefit, except that you don't have to register it with the FAA. That's all it is. You don't have to register the drone with the FAA if you're doing it recreationally. The second that you decide to do this commercially, which is in the furtherance of a business, which is basically anything that isn't, I mean, the way that they say it is 100% recreational is purely for pleasure purposes, purely for enjoyment purposes. Something along that line is like basically the exact thing that they say. So the misunderstanding is very, I understand it because I understand the misunderstanding because I fell into it. When I first started, I thought it meant that I got to do other things with the drone, that I didn't have to worry about, like, oh, I'm near an airport and, all these other restrictions. There's a lot of people that have that confusion. And really, the end of the day, all it saves you is $5 and your name on the FAA registry. And the only reason why the registry is there is because they've determined that anything that's over at 250 and over, the drone has to be at under 250, which means 249.99, right? So as long as it's under that 250 gram limit at takeoff and landing, then you don't have to register the drone. The second that you put something on it, so just so those who don't know, like the Mini, this is the DJI Mini or the Autel Nano. I have links in the description to some of the more common sub 250 gram drones. This is one of them. This is the size, right? So I showed this on yesterday's. It's like the size of a cell phone, thicker, but not quite that big. So the second that you put prop guards on this, or like this is one of those strobes, anything, a piece of string is going to put this over 250 grams. So you're not really saving much as far as like the legal side of things. And as far as flight restrictions, I know that some countries I've been kind of keeping tabs on what other people say about their countries. I think the UK might have slightly different regulations where you can fly in areas that you wouldn't be able to, just like maybe parks or something. I don't know, but you got to check your local regulations. But the whole point of the 250 is that they've determined that anything over the 250 mark it could cause damage to a person or property. And that's really what it comes down to. If your drone crashes into something and it's like the Mavic 3 or the Air 2 or just something that's bigger than this little mini drone, they want to know who to contact. If it falls out of the sky and maybe you don't know where it landed, but it's like, oh man, it fell somewhere and maybe it lands on a poor old lady's head and she needs stitches. They're saying that a little guy like this isn't really going to cause any damage. It might knock her on the noggin and that's about it. But that's in a nutshell. You only save the $5 in the registration. That's it. Everything else you still have to follow. One of the other things that has kind of come up with this is the flight restrictions, like the airspace restrictions. Somebody asked another question. Part of that question was, I only have a a mini drone. So can I fly in this airspace? Or my neighbor is saying that they don't want me in this airspace. There's actually one about an island, a private island. Again, in the United States, any place underneath the FAA regulation is that nobody controls the airspace above their property. The FAA is in control of airspace. So I can't tell somebody, hey, you can't fly over my house. Does that mean that they should? Does that mean that I should fly over somebody else's house? That's a question for a larger community discussion. But they can't control the airspace above them. But what they can do is say, you can't take off from our property. You can take off from across the street because they have no jurisdiction there. Should you? Again, that's one of those like polite things that maybe we should, be friendly with each other. And if somebody doesn't want you flying over their property, and maybe you don't do it. So, but I'm not here to preach. It's just we have a pretty bad reputation as drone pilots. And a lot of that is because non-drone pilots and drone pilots have a tendency to butt heads. It's just like anything else. It's the east side, west side mentality of you can't tell me what to do. Oh yeah. And then, the whole thing. So anyway, nobody can tell you that you can't fly over their property. But one thing that you do want to watch out for is that they might have, the average person probably is not going to have this, but in the scenario of that guy that was asking about private island, they might have either a temporary flight restriction or another restricted airspace over that island, or maybe it's a big property. Sometimes celebrities, I've heard about celebrities in different parts of the country will have no-fly zones in their areas. Sometimes because they have their own private airport, other times probably privacy. But you always want to check your NOTAMs or your airspace. For those that don't have Part 107 and understand how to read the sectional charts and the digital ones, you can just go on an app like AirMap or Aloft, which I think it's now called Air Control, or the FAA's app before you fly, and they'll tell you if something legally from the FAA's perspective you're allowed to fly in that air zone. So anyway, that's really it. It's just 250 grams or lower. You just don't have to register it with the FAA. Everything else, all other restrictions, you have to follow. And I feel like it's one of those things that is very confusing, but it's another reason to get your Part 107, because I'm a big advocate for that, because you learn so much, honestly. And then you open up doors of stuff that you wouldn't necessarily have before, like avenues for doing commercial work. And it's so much fun. It really is. But that's it. Super quick. I'll see you guys on the next one. Until next time, fly safe and be good to each other.